how I'm planning to read more in 2022, Spark Notes, spoiler-filled reviews so I don't actually have to read the book, watching the movie adaptation and pretending I read the book. Instead of reading the book from start to finish, I'll just read the ending. The end. Like and cancel me on Twitter. Hashtag Jesse is over party. Just kidding. Back it up, backtrack, let's start over. Even though I feel like this is going to be the year that I put the least amount of pressure on myself, I still want to read a lot of books. Who doesn't? If you're like me at all, then the amount of books that you have that are unread is a little bit out of hand. I literally had a nightmare the other night that my friends came over to my house and started shaming me over the amount of books that I have that are unread. I'd hope that they'd never actually do that to me in real life, but that nightmare felt real. Pretty sure I woke up sweating. I also have a lot of goals that I want to achieve outside of reading. Shocker, I do more than read. Gotta be a lie, my love. I'm not a liar, I'm nothing but a truther. Unless you ask me how many unread books I have, then I will tell you 5, which is in fact a lie. Today, I'm going to be going over some things that I'm going to be attempting in my own reading life in hopes that it'll lead me to reading more books. Before we get to it though, a word from our sponsor. Today's video's sponsor is Book of the Month. Book of the Month, my fave, my babe, my love, Book of the Month. Book of the Month is a monthly bookish subscription service. Their mission is to promote new and emerging authors and helping readers find their next favorite book. Each month, their team curates a solid list of books, some new and some early releases. That way you don't have to do all the work looking for your next read. They do all that work for you, and to that I say, thank you! Sometimes finding that next book to read on my own is too hard. On top of that, with Book of the Month, you're paying less than you would for a hardcover in stores. We love a deal. We love a steal. Thank you, Book of the Month. Book of the Month has hooked me up with a code. You can get your first book for only $9.99 using the code Jesse. Book of the Month is also great because if you're subscribed and you're just not feeling that month's picks, they make it really easy to skip a month and you won't be charged. Now, let's go over the January selection. First up, Fiona and Jane. This story follows two young Taiwanese American women through their navigations of friendship, sexuality, identity, and heartbreak over 2 decades. Next, Love and Other Disasters. Not this book title trying to attack my dating life. This is a romantic comedy that takes place on a cooking show as 2 non-binary contestants fall for each other. Next, The Magnolia Palace. This is a historical fiction meets murder mystery novel. We unravel the secrets, betrayal, and murder within one of New York City's most impressive Gilded Age mansions. When historical fiction and murder mystery hold hands, I am one happy reader. Next up, we've got Black Cake. This story follows 2 estranged siblings coming together after the passing of their mother and their journey to unraveling her hidden past. Next, we've got Reckless Girls by Rachel Hawkins. Out of all the picks, I'm most excited for this one because I love Rachel Hawkins' writing style. In this book, we've got 6 travelers and 1 island that is full of shipwrecks and rumors of murder and cannibalism. Yikes. When one person goes missing and another turns up dead, the guests must get to the bottom of everything before they're all goners. And finally, we have their add-on option. With each month's Book of the Month order, you can add on a book. That is if you're wanting more books, which, if you're like me, you probably are. You might not need them, but you want them. Watcha. In the box, we have The Maid. In this book, we follow a maid who one day walks in on her client dead. And we follow the chaos that ensues as she begins to pick up on clues as to what happened to them. Those are the book selections for the month of January and the add-on. And again, you can use my code Jesse to get your first book for $9.99. Now it's time to get back to the video. I will say that sometimes I feel like I overanalyze reading in general, and it should be as simple as 1, 2, 3, A, B, C, read a dang book. But sometimes it's like 4, 5, 6, D, E, F, easier said than done. Or 7, 8, 9, G, H, I, Slumpty Dumpty fell on my head. But all that aside, today I'm going to be going over some things that I'm going to be doing to try and read more this year. Some of these I already know work for me, and some of them are things that I'm going to be trying for the first time. We love reading experiments. Cheers to that. Give me a lab coat and goggles and call me a reader scientist, why don't you? I'm coming for you, Bill Nye. Let's get started. Number 1, audiobooks. Now this one is obviously not a new concept. This is probably on every how to read more list out there on the internet. And that's because it freaking works. It's the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. It's the marshmallows and the Lucky Charms. It's that good stuff. Audiobooks are literal lifesavers in my opinion. Not lifesavers. Reader savers? Reading life savers? Reading time savers? Maybe that's what I'm looking for. If you're like me and you're the ultimate multitasker and you're trying to do 10 things at the same time, audiobooks come through. I get that not everyone is good at focusing with audiobooks, but I love them. They help me when I'm doing the most mundane of things, like washing the dishes, doing the laundry, cleaning the toilet. There's nothing more iconic than when you're listening to an audiobook and scrubbing a toilet and a spicy scene comes on. And then you take yourself out of the scene and try to envision what you look like in that moment. Someone hang this in a museum. Next step is to stop romanticizing reading. This is one that I saw on an Instagram post once and I can't for the life of me find it, but it's this idea that romanticizing reading can sometimes hold us back from actually doing the act of reading. And I feel like this applies to a lot of things. For example, writing. Oftentimes I romanticize it. I'm like, like, I'm gonna grab some tea, I'm gonna sit at my computer and type away and the words are gonna flow and I'm gonna create this amazing masterpiece, and the next thing I know, I'm deleting everything because all my words are trash. And it's just not going how I thought it was gonna go. I'm not saying that reading is hard, but in my opinion, it's not as easy as throwing on a TV show or throwing on a movie and just laying in bed, chillaxing. You gotta actively use your mind to read words and process what is happening and envision what's happening and envision the characters in the world. Then of course there's the reading position on top of that and trying to get comfy while reading. Oof, when you hit that sweet spot though and you're able to spend hours reading in that same position, that's the sweetest of spots. Nothing is sweeter than that. Next step, I'm gonna try to not limit myself to one genre. I want my books to be ever changing with what I'm reading in general. I want to try and not get caught up in one genre. For example, last year, a majority of what I read last year was contemporary. I had a fantasy novel here and there and maybe one or two sci-fi, but I was mostly in the realistic fiction gutter. It just had a hold of me and I could not break loose of its grip, but I'm breaking loose of its grip this year. I'm breaking free, soaring, flying. There's not a star in... I'm sorry. Stop. Back it up. Normal. I want to actively make sure that I'm reading different genres because I think that brings some excitement into your reading life due to the fact that you're never reading the same thing. Sure, there might be similarities, but a majority of the time they're pretty different. As much as I love contemporary fiction and I will literally fight for its respect, chuck me in an arena and I will get knocking for it. But there are times when I read contemporary fiction and I'm like, this was good, but it didn't really bring anything new to the table. I'm someone who thrives on change, says the person who has so many routines that he follows daily. But I do love change and I love the idea of changing the genres that I'm reading consistently because I feel like it's just gonna bring some excitement into my life. I'm just crossing all my fingers and all my toes and everything else that I can cross in hopes that I don't just read contemporary fiction this year. I don't want to fall into that gutter this year. And I'm gonna need y'all to hold me accountable. If you see me only reading contemporary fiction, I need you to roast me. Tweet at me and say, bruh, you're done. Put the book down and pick up something new. Next step, I want to try out a page chart. I feel like this one sounds really nerdy, but it's worked out for me, so no judgment, please. Don't judge me. I feel y'all judging me. It's always been really nice, and I've never really done it for every book, and I don't think that I'm gonna do it for every single book I read this year because that's a lot. That's a lot to commit to, and I don't see myself committing to every single book. But basically, I love seeing progress with different things that I'm working on. I love when I start writing and the word count goes up, 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 and then I cry when I delete words and my word count goes down, down, down. I love when I'm reading a book and I have a bookmark in it and I can see the progress I've made within that book. I love updating my progress on bookish social media accounts. So essentially, what a page chart is. Sounded like I just said chart. I promise I said chart. It sounded like I said chart again. Chart. Chart. Emphasis on the cha-cha-cha. I break down the book I'm reading in 50-page increments. So every time I read 50 pages, I fill up that little increment in the chart and it begins to fill up over time. And I fill up over time with pure joy. It's one of those weird things that probably shouldn't give me serotonin, but it does. It weirdly excites me. The next step for me is remembering that manga, graphic novels, and comics count as reading. I think this is just a stigma that I've never been able to let go of. Like, I'm always like, well, of course it's real reading. It counts as a real book. But then I'll read a graphic novel or a manga and I'll feel this sense of insecurity about the fact that it's not a novel, so it's not valued in the same way. Which is dumb. It's real reading. It can be valued just as much as a novel. It can impact you just as much as a full-fledged novel. Even though we're in the year of 2022 and we've made lots of progress with lots of things, there's still things like this where I'm just like, why are we thinking so backwards? Plus, mangas, graphic novels, and comics all have a lot of words in them. Is it different than a full-fledged novel? Well, of course. You still have to read the words and connect them to the pictures to understand what's happening, besties. Like, that is reading, my pals. I think this is mostly an insecurity for me though, because I get comments all the time of people being like, well, that's not real reading. Manga, graphic novels, comics, nope, those don't count. You can't count that as real reading towards your Goodreads goal. And to that I say, you're not my mom. You can't tell me what to do. Next, I don't have fully figured out because I don't know which method works best for me, but that's to either sit down and have a page number in mind as to what I want to read when I sit down, or to not have one at all. And honestly, I feel like this one is going to be a bit situational because if I'm in a good mood and a good mental health spot, then I can sit down and be like, okay, I'm reading 50 pages today. Easy. But then there are the times when my life is a mess and I'm not feeling my best. And those are the times where I'll just read what I feel like I can. And it also depends on the book that I'm reading. Because if it's a book that I'm easily able to fall into the flow of, then I'll just sit down and read the dang thing. No problem. But there are those books that are just a little bit more of a challenge to break into. And those are the ones where I feel like I'm gonna have to be like, okay, we're sitting down, we're doing 50 pages today, let's go! Next, we have the classic, but it's also the one that I always struggle with, and that is to DNF books. I have consistently throughout my reading life struggled with the idea of DNFing books. I made that sound like such a big deal. Am I in therapy right now? Gonna break down crying over the fact that I struggle DNFing books. It's just been really hard to DNF books that I just don't connect with. you know? Okay, enough of that. I know I will continue to struggle with this one because I'm the type of person that feels like they need to give the book a strong chance. Like, give it time before I fully know how I feel about it. And oftentimes too, I feel like when I read a book and I'm not really vibing with it, I want to continue to read it because I want to know like why it's not working for me. And I want to apply what I learned to my own writing. Like in some ways I'm reading it for research purposes. Like I'm reading it to find out why I don't like the characters, what's not working with the pacing, is there a predictability element that I don't like, different things like that, but it's a habit that I would love to break as soon as I can. Wish me luck with that one, besties. The thing is too, I have one more point with this and I promise we'll move on. The thing is, when I read books that I don't like, they often take me a long time to read them because I dread reading them every time I pick them up. And that is just going to continue to slow down my reading pace. Next is to start actively using Goodreads again. I barely touched Goodreads at all last year. There was just something about it last year that I just was not vibing with. I was not into it. My profile collected dust, but I'm gonna try my best and keep a healthy Goodreads relationship this year. And I'm gonna do my best to be consistent with updating it because I've found that it's just kind of a nice way to keep myself reading. Not only that, but it's a nice way to kind of keep myself within the book world. Seeing new releases, seeing what everybody else is reading. It's a great way to like be in the community. And I love Goodreads when I'm an active user, like putting what page I'm on, asking for recommendations, or updating when I've completed a book. It's one of those nerdy things that just really excites me. The last step that I have for myself is to not force it and just read. Even though I literally just spewed off a list of things that I want to try, I think the best thing that I can do for myself this year is to not overthink the whole reading thing. Like, yes, sure, try all these things, try to implement them, but at the end of the day, just pick up a book and read it and just enjoy it. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. Says the person who puts way too much pressure on himself at all times. Those are some of the things that I'm going to be attempting this year in terms of my reading life. I'll be able to tell pretty early on if it's in the cards for me to have a really good reading year. You guys should let me know down below in the comments some of the things that you're going to be implementing in your life to read more in 2022, because I'm always open to having more tips flood in. If you like this video, be sure to go and hit that like button. If you want to see more bookish content from me, be sure to go and hit subscribe or go and hit that bell icon and you'll be notified every time I post new videos. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope your day is bright, that tomorrow is brighter. Keep reading what your heart desires. Bye, yo!